hear before you see. A dry, deep crack that pierces the air as if something were being torn apart by its own force. The ground vibrates beneath your feet, the wall trembles. And for a moment you don't know if what you just heard came from the earth, the sky, or some wild animal hidden in the darkness of the valley. But it's not an animal. It's worse. It's the warning that Rome has arrived. And she hasn't come to negotiate. She has come to destroy. Down below, in the open field, a grotesque wooden machine rides as if alive, breathing the heavy night air while soldiers struggle against ropes stretched to their limit. A single arm, heavy and unpredictable, is pulled down, creaking as if about to explode. The legionnaires hold on tight, but none dares to get too close. They know what is about to happen. The tension rises. The silence grows. And then the commander's shout cuts through the air. The latch is released. The arm rises with brutal violence, so fast the eye can barely follow. A man-sized stone is hurled into the sky, disappears for a second, and reappears, descending with the force of lightning. You hear only the impact, a roar that shakes your soul and sends a cloud of dust flying over the wall. Men scream. Wood cracks. Stone flies. And while everything is still echoing, while you're trying to understand what just happened, the ground shakes again. The machine recoiled completely, as if it had kicked, and the winch is already being pulled once more. This was how Rome began a siege. Not with diplomacy, not with warnings, but with the terrifying sound of the Onager, the most brutal siege engine the empire ever built. And now you're going to find out why. Before we continue, tell me something. If you were there, hearing the first shot of the Onager, that roar that makes your chest tremble and the wall crumble, would you have the courage to stand firm on top of the defense? Or would you run without looking back? Comment below what you think would have happened to you at that moment. And if this kind of journey through ancient Rome captivates you as much as it captivates me, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and leave your like right now. This helps a lot so that more people discover these stories forgotten by time. Let's continue. Rome's most brutal siege engine didn't announce its arrival with flags or the metallic glint of organized legions. It warned with a dry, deep, almost animalistic sound, a crack that seemed to tear the air and make the earth vibrate beneath its feet. It was the roar of the Onager, a weapon so feared that its name came from a wild ass known for kicking with unpredictable violence. And this comparison was no exaggeration. Each shot from this machine produced such a violent recoil that even the Roman soldiers themselves kept their distance, because a single timing error was enough for the accumulated force to turn against them. Today you will walk with me inside the engineering, the psychological terror, and the real devastation caused by this machine that often decided wars before the first legion crossed the gates of a city. And as you advance in this story, try to imagine for just a moment, what would it be like to be on the wrong side of the shot? The Onager was born from the combination of mechanical ingenuity and pure brutality. Rome didn't just want a weapon that hurled heavy projectiles. It wanted a weapon that would break the enemy's will, that would destroy walls and spirits with equal efficiency. To this end, it built a wooden structure so robust that it resembled a cage more than a machine. At the center of this structure was a single throwing arm, thick and massive, designed to withstand unnatural forces. This arm didn't work alone. It depended on a bundle of ropes or tendons twisted to their limit. Real animal tendons, dried and treated to withstand monstrous tensions. This twisted assembly was the soul of the weapon. When pulled by a winch, it accumulated so much energy that even those accustomed to operating the machine felt a shiver before releasing the shot, because they knew that that moment separated absolute control from total chaos. Imagine the soldiers positioning the stone. And remember, we're not talking about pebbles. A well-mounted Onager could launch projectiles weighing 50 kilograms or more, the weight of an entire man compressed into solid rock. The stone was placed in a sort of spoon or sling fixed to the top of the arm. Meanwhile, the winch began to slowly pull the arm down. Each turn increased the tension on the beam. Each snap reminded the legionaries that they were dealing with a force that could both destroy walls and crush a careless operator. That's why, When the arm reached its maximum point of tension, the team instinctively recoiled, like someone backing away from an animal about to pounce. The shot wasn't just a quick movement, it was explosive. The instant the safety was released, the arm shot up with brutal speed, and the entire Onager seemed to tremble. The stone flew in a high arc, invisible at first, until it took shape against the sky. The impact, far ahead, generated a cloud of dust, splinters, and screams. And for the defenders on the wall, the worst part wasn't the stone they saw. It was the one they didn't see. Because when the projectile descended, it was too late to run. Some accounts speak of entire towers cracking, parapets crushed, soldiers being thrown far away without knowing where the blow came from. And while this was happening, the Onager produced its characteristic recoil. The arm, upon hitting the wooden shock absorber, returned so much energy that the entire machine leaped backward like an untamed animal. This leap, this kick, this unpredictable movement helped build the weapon's ferocious reputation. Now imagine a line of Onagers lined up before an enemy city. It wasn't just an isolated machine, it was a bombardment. Siege warriors weren't made of haste, they were made of method. The strategy was simple and devastating. Choose a point on the wall and concentrate shot after shot on the same spot. Each stone tore away a piece, each impact opened a fissure, each tremor shook not only the physical structure of the defense, but also the morale of the men who had to remain up there, praying that the next stone wouldn't fall exactly where they stood. Many cities surrendered not when the gate was broken down, but when they realized they couldn't endure another night hearing the Onagers sound echoing through the valley. The machine's versatility also made it a tool of terror. Besides heavy stones, the Onager could launch amphorae filled with incendiary materials, hot oil, pitch, flammable substances. When these amphorae broke upon impact, they spread flames across elevated areas of the walls, forcing enemy archers to abandon their posts and creating vulnerable corridors for the Roman advance. Imagine being atop a fortification, trying to hold out, and seeing not only enormous stones flying through the air, but jars of fire tearing through the air and exploding against the dry wood of the towers. It's no surprise that many enemy soldiers abandoned their positions even before the legion's final assault. But the Onager didn't appear out of nowhere. Its history parallels the evolution of siege warfare in the Mediterranean. The Greeks had already created powerful machines, ballistas, catapults, scorpions, all based on the principle of torsion. Rome observed, adapted, and improved. The Greek scorpion was lighter, more precise, but lacked the brutality needed to destroy entire walls. The ballista was efficient, but complex and sensitive. The Onager was a more savage and simpler synthesis, a weapon that sacrificed finesse for sheer force. This made it more resilient on the battlefield and less dependent on meticulous adjustments. It could be assembled with different types of wood, could operate even with minor damage, and could be quickly repaired between shots. One of the most important historical descriptions of the Onager comes from Ammianus Marcellinus, a 4th century military writer. He describes the machine with the precision of someone who saw it in operation firsthand. According to him, the Onager was capable of devastating entire groups of soldiers, crushing men and shields as if they were toys. Ammianus also describes the violent recoil and deafening sound of the weapon, confirming that the fear it produced was as strategic as the physical damage. It was not just a tool of destruction, it was a psychological tool. The period in which the Onager truly shone was the end of the Roman Empire, when Rome faced complex and constant threats. Fortified cities, resistant tribes, armies dominating the terrain, all this demanded a new military approach. And the Onager fit perfectly into this scenario. It allowed Rome to attack fortified positions without relying exclusively on hand-to-hand combat. It allowed them to reduce enemy forces before direct confrontation. It allowed them to instill fear even before the first sword strike. In the Byzantine Empire, the weapon continued to be used, even further improved, with stronger ropes and reinforced bases. Even after the development of other more modern machines, the Onager remained useful, especially in prolonged campaigns where durability and brute force were more important than precision. Now imagine what it would be like to be in the heart of a Roman siege. Before you even see a single legion take position, you would hear the deep sound of the onager being prepared, the snap of the ropes, the creaking of a winch, the commander's shout ordering distance, a tense silence, then the shot, so fast that the eyes can barely follow, so powerful that even the operator feels the air escaping from his lungs. And then the wait, just a few seconds, but enough to freeze any man. When the stone finally strikes the wall, the sound echoes throughout the city, mixing with dust, shrapnel, and the first sign that the resistance may not last long. And before you can take another deep breath, the winch is already being turned again. Before we continue, think about this for a moment. You're high on the wall, the air vibrates, the ground trembles, and before you understand what's happening, the first shot from the onager explodes against the stone beside you. The sound alone would be enough to make anyone doubt their own courage. And that's why I want to know from you, what would you do in that moment? Would you stand firm waiting for the next impact? Or would you abandon your defense before the machine fired again? Tell me in the comments. Seriously, your answers always enrich these journeys through ancient Rome so much. Let's continue. This sequence repeated itself dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. It was common for the ground around the onager to be deeply scarred by the machine's jumps. Enemy archers knew that attacking the onager was a priority, but reaching it was nearly impossible when protected by the legions. And even when they managed to launch arrows, the distance was rarely enough to prevent the bombardment. For many defenders, the onager became an omen, a kind of warning that the city was counting its last hours as an independent fortification. The terror came from both the sound and the sight. It was as if the very air feared the shot. The psychological impact of the onager is often overlooked, but it's fundamental. Ancient warfare wasn't just physical, it was mental. If you can make the enemy doubt their own ability to resist, you've already won half the battle. The onager did this better than any other weapon. Soldiers reported that, after a few shots, it was impossible to maintain formation on the walls. The vibration affected not only the body, but also the mind. Many remembered the sound first and the impact later. Can you imagine fighting while knowing that, at any moment, a rock the size of a boar could fall exactly where you are? That changes everything. It displaces courage, distorts focus, contaminates strategy. And when panic begins to spread, Rome has already won. It is important to note that operating the onager also required skill. It wasn't simply a matter of pulling and releasing. It required coordination, angle calculation, and approximate measurement of wind and weight. Some operators became specialists, capable of repeatedly striking a specific point on the wall until it was reduced to rubble. These soldiers were as valuable as elite archers. The Roman army understood that engineering and discipline were weapons as powerful as the blade of a gladius. And despite all this, the onager had limitations. It was heavy, difficult to transport, especially over rough terrain. It took days to assemble correctly. It depended on a large number of men to operate and reload quickly. However, when positioned in the right place, with a clear view of the target, it became virtually unstoppable. It was the perfect definition of strategic brute force. Now that you've explored the mechanics, psychology, history, and terror this machine instilled, I want to know from you. If you were defending a city threatened by Rome, what would scare you the most? The impact of the stone? The sound of the gunshot? Or the moment you realize you have nowhere to hide? Leave your opinion in the comments. I read everything and always reply when I can. The video explains why the onager was considered Rome's most brutal siege engine, showing how its torsion system stored enormous energy which, when released, launched giant stones with devastating force. The narrative describes the physical and psychological impact of the firing, the violent recoil of the structure, and the terrifying sound that weakened enemy morale even before reaching the wall. It also presents the historical evolution of the weapon, its origins in Greek machines, and its intensive use at the end of the Roman Empire and during the Byzantine period, highlighting its decisive role in sieges and battles. Before we wrap up, let me pose you a challenge that only those who have truly immersed themselves in this story can answer. After everything you've seen about the brutal power of the Onager, the chest-shaking roar, the earth-shaking recoil, the stone flying like thunderbolts from the hands of Rome, imagine for a moment that you are there, atop the wall, facing this force head-on. Do you believe you could hold your position until the last shot? Or would the psychological pressure of this machine bring you down before impact? I'm really curious to hear your perspective, your reaction, your theory. Tell me in comments. How do you imagine it would have been to face a weapon that destroyed walls and morale at the same time? Each of your comments brings a fresh perspective on history and helps build this community passionate about Rome. Keep watching, because in the next video we'll explore even more secrets, strategies, and mysteries that shaped Roman power. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in the next video.